almost said my new and selected poems are out. One of the spirits presiding over it is Dante, but only because he gave me the three sections. As you might guess from looking at me, I've probably spent about as much time in purgatory as any of you out there in the audience, and I've had as many days as I have been able to arrange that have been paradisal, but I haven't made it to hell yet, and I can't, for the life of me, I can't recall a single minute. But the book is divided into three sections. I'm going to read you some poems from each of those sections. This first one is the title poem, "The House on Boulevard Street," and it's about love and sex and how they get kind of, you know what I mean? Was it different for you? Especially when you're young and you're trying to figure these things out. The philosopher Epictetus said that everything has two handles. One you can pick it up by, and one you can't. And so when you're a young person, you're trying to figure out, who you are and what you want to do and how to do it. It takes a while to find it. So this is called "The House on Boulevard Street." It's where my wife, the transcendent and word-drunk poet Barbara Hamby, lived when I first met her. And, I've lived in the South all my life, and I'm used to these southern doublings like Cane Reed or Water Hose or Tooth Dentist. I got to go see the tooth dentist. Just the other day, a guy said, "Thank God all this pollen dust has quit falling." And so, yeah, I agree, So anyway, Barbara lived in a place called the House on Boulevard Street. And I just thought it was one of those doublings, but as you'll see, there's a rather different etymology. This poem features a cast of characters, including a gentleman named Ted Bundy, who was notorious for his savage and murderous attacks on people, and was there as a kind of third figure when I was looking at Barbara and trying to figure out how to get her. So he'll show up there. The House on Boulevard Street. "In the days after my first marriage collapsed, I thought, virtue is gone. In the words of old Sir John Mandeville, the clergy is in error. The devil reigneth, simony beareth sway, suicide carrieth off many, and drink taketh the rest, one of whom was me. I was sleeping single and drinking doubles. Oh yeah, for I didn't have a clue about love. Not one, only the rueful example of my parents and my preteen foray into the world of beefcake magazines, of Grecian Guild pictorial, manual, and trim, with their smiling sailors face down on beach towels, their Italian teenagers in posing pouches leaning against fake Roman walls, their latter-day Houdinis in baby oil and chains. I wanted to be one of these guys, not embrace them, for I knew that even once around the capstan with those gladiators or Jolly Jack tars would have not been right for me, and so I hoisted barbells I'd made of broomsticks and paint cans and chinned my spindly frame on our sagging barn door. As for learning from my peers, well, there was Melvin, who'd fallen in love with a girl at camp when he was 14 and written her a letter he'd signed, "Screwingly yours, Melvin," which her mother intercepted and sent to his mother. And Melvin, guessing correctly that letter's contents from the return address of the envelope, opened same and tore the incriminating missive to bits, in which act he was espied by his father, a rabbi, no less, who visited upon him both the wrath of Yahweh and a roll of Scotch tape, making Melvin bring together what he had put asunder, the salacious jigsaw puzzle reassembling itself as the SCRE sought the W, the EL its VIN. I grew up. What choice did I have? And saw before me the examples of literature of Elias Canetti, Nobel laureate lover of Iris Murdoch, who came already equipped with a mistress and a one-armed wife, and he was so well known a sadist, it was suggested he himself had bitten off his wife's arm. Then came marriage, betrayal, self-betrayal. None of this seemed very much like the golden world of As You Like It, where gentlefolk fleet time carelessly. It wasn't Le Crépuscule de Dieu, no sir. It was more like the gods hadn't even been born yet. Still, I was hopeful. What choice did I have? Because I just knew that somewhere out there on the veldt A beautiful woman was grazing, and one day she'd be mine. Though finally when I saw her against the horizon, it turned out that she was neither antelope nor gnu, no, not hartebeest or wildebeest at all, but more like a little fox, a woodland creature with a tiny pointed nose and little pretty whiskers and 4 dainty silver paws. She'd trot down the sidewalk on, and so pretty and foxy was she that every guy in town who wasn't already afraid of his current girlfriend followed her around with his tongue hanging out like a dog. And in those days she lived in a house by the cemetery. And when she walked home at night, dead motherfuckers used to crawl up out of the earth and go rattling after her. And Ted Bundy was living just a block away. And I bet he stood there dreaming about all the women he'd torn to pieces. And then he hears something pit-patting down the sidewalk, and blood rises behind his teeth. But when he sees her, he thinks, Christ, a fox. And by now, even the ghouls love her so much, they link their bony arms and make a ring around her as she trots along, because they know death is there in the shadows. I was so depressed then that I used to sit around and play Elvis Costello's Allison over and over and feel all the emotions I had felt before, plus a bunch of new ones the old ones had given birth to. And that house by the cemetery was on what was then known as Boulevard Street, so named in the uncertain orthography of city sign makers for Simón Bolívar, a.k.a. El Libertador and the George Washington of South America, for his dogged campaign against the Spanish that won independence for Bolivia, Panama, Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela, and Peru. I was also reading the great Marina Saiteva, who wrote, there was no approach to art, that it was instead a kind of seizing. And I thought, why shouldn't life imitate books? Why shouldn't I just reach out and take what had already taken me? For I was like a hiker in the mouth of a bear. One minute he's writing the species of a new bird in his journal, or gulping a swig of designer water, and the next he's being borne off to a cave, the hungry cubs batting playfully at his hairless calves. So at last I just asked her out, and she said, yes. And at the end of the evening, I asked her again, and again she said, yes. And my heart spun in my chest like the Sufi poem that says, O son of Tabriz, I am so tipsy here in this world. I have no tale to tell, but tipsiness and rapture. To this day, though, that Elvis Costello song makes me want to cry. And then I get my Bolivar on, and I wave my sword in the air, and I cut and thrust at the Spain of my self-pity. Today, Boulevard Street is Martin Luther King Boulevard, and thus honors 2 great liberators, one secretly.